Hey everybody, welcome to Pick Dr. Osborne's Brain. Hope you're having a great evening. Tonight we're going to be talking all about sunshine. We're going to be teasing out myths versus realities, and we're going to be talking about how sunshine can play a potential role in autoimmune disease. We're also going to be talking about what you need to know about the beneficial aspects of sunlight exposure. So if you've got questions on this topic you'd like to get answers tonight, go ahead and type those questions into the feed. I'll do my best to get them all answered. First come, first served basis. So let's dive into sunshine toxicity, truth or myth. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because it's so common in medicine today. You go to the doctor, especially dermatologists, and you're told avoid the sunshine because sunshine gives you an increased risk for skin cancers, right? We hear this all the time. It's probably one of the most common pieces of medical nonsense that ever spewed forth from the mouth of a doctor. And I say that with all seriousness. It's dangerous and it's life-threatening, that advice. Now, some of you may be saying, well, I'm ginger, I'm really pale, I get burned really easy in the sun. Even those of you who are very pale should be getting sunshine within reason, within the toleration of the limits of your skin. But to say that sunshine causes skin cancer, in my opinion, should be construed or considered as malpractice, because there's so many benefits to sunshine. Your body can't survive without it, can't function without it, can't regulate hormones without it, and that's what I want to talk about tonight. So, some of the myths about sunshine. Number one is that sunshine is dangerous. Sunburning is dangerous, sunshine is not. It's kind of like you can drown in water, but water's not dangerous, right? There is a limit, but you need it to survive. It's the same thing with sunshine. Sunshine causes cancer is a myth. Sunburning can increase your risk of cancer. Sunshine actually reduces your risk of cancer. And then the third is that sun avoidance prevents cancer. This also is a myth, and that we know where people get their skin cancers. Many of the skin cancers that people get diagnosed with, the vast majority of them actually occur on areas of the skin that get the least amount of sun exposure. So sun avoidance is not helping you. Slathering up with toxic sunscreens that contain carcinogens for the phobia, that's something that you should avoid or protect yourself from, is rather ridiculous. Any SPF, any sunscreen greater than 8, those numbers, that SPF number that you see on a sunscreen, generally, nowadays it's hard to find them much lower than 15. What I'm telling you is anything greater than 8 will inhibit vitamin D production by your skin. About 90% of the production that your skin could have is inhibited directly as a result of sunscreen. Now, ladies, if you wear cosmetics, you should also know that most of your cosmetics have an SPF somewhere in the neighborhood of at least 20. So if you've got, cosmetics that you're wearing on your face every day, where do we make the vast majority of our vitamin D? On our face. So if you're slathering up, SPF cosmetics, you are reducing your body's ability to produce vitamin D from the skin in your face. And if you're wearing lotion, a lot of the lotions also contain SPF. Then now your arms, potentially your legs, any other areas you're trying to hydrate your skin with that lotion are also potentially you're blocking out vitamin D production, which is one of the major benefits of sunshine, which we'll get to in just a minute, but I want to bring that up. So if you're wearing these things, you're reducing your capacity to get access to one of the most fundamental and most important vitamins known to man, with some of the most health protective and health generating benefits. So let's talk about some of the benefits of sunshine overall. As I mentioned a moment ago, vitamin D, and we'll dive more into that in just a minute. So if we look at just what sun helps us do through the skin, it was interesting. So the skin, when solar radiation hits your skin, there's a type of cholesterol in your skin. It's called 7-dehydrocholesterol. The bad stuff, right? Doctors also demonize cholesterol and tell you the evils of cholesterol, but cholesterol is the precursor to all steroids in the body, including estrogen, progesterone, guys, testosterone, but also cholesterol, or rather also vitamin D. So the skin contains a form of cholesterol that when the sunlight hits it produces vitamin D. And again, that's where if you're wearing sunscreens, you're going to minimize your exposure to vitamin D. Melatonin, the eyes. When light hits the eyes from the sun, it signals the brain to produce melatonin. Now, what is melatonin good for? This is especially true when we get morning sunshine. So the more sunlight you catch in the morning, generally speaking, between the hours of about 9 and 11, those hours have been studied to show us that you'll produce better and more melatonin through the course of your day if you get that morning time sunlight exposure. Now, a lot of you live in climates, where sometimes that's a little bit more challenging. And one of the things that you can look at doing is you can do sun lamps, which actually produce UV light. You can also do what are called light boxes. Now, light boxes and sun lamps are not the same thing. A light box, generally what you're looking for is something that has 10,000 illuminations or more, oftentimes referred to as LUX. This will help this aspect of producing melatonin, whereas the sun lamp will help your cholesterol in your skin turn into vitamin D. But again, we need both. So ideally, you're getting adequate sunshine to make this happen. But again, that timing of sunlight, especially in the morning, helps with melatonin. Now, one of the things that melatonin does is it helps us to make serotonin. Now, aside from, we talked about sleep a few weeks ago, and we talked about melatonin being very critical for helping the brain shut off and actually fall asleep and getting that deep, restful period of sleep that helps us heal and repair. You need melatonin to do that. So this is all from sunshine, folks. The light helps your brain produce the hormone that allows you to get deep, restful sleep. But also we take and we convert melatonin into serotonin. And there have been studies that show that same time framing of early morning light improves serotonin production. Now, this is free, right? Sunshine is free. It doesn't cost you anything to go outside. Again, you have to get past the myth that sunshine is dangerous for you. But so many avoid the sun for fear of that skin cancer component. And remember that serotonin, what does this do? As a hormone, it's one of the things that staves off depression. Or let's just put it like this. SAD, SAD, seasonal affective disorder. And so when you're making adequate quantities of serotonin, again, there's a whole class of medications called SSRIs that doctors prescribe, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, to stop depression and seasonal affective disorder. But in reality, we have a free antidepressant within the sunshine itself. It doesn't cost you anything, where these SSRIs can really, not only can they hit your pocketbook, but they don't come without their list of problems and side effects either. We also know, melatonin, serotonin, we also know that sunlight changes gene expression in the adrenal glands. It helps help your body adapt to stress, and this has its impact on cortisol. So we talked about adrenal function too recently, and so you might want to go back and review that show. So again, sunshine does all three: melatonin, serotonin, cortisol. And then one of the other things that sunshine helps us to produce naturally are endorphins. And these endorphins are chemicals that help us feel happier, right? Help us chemically feel good, right? The same thing that when people talk about exercise creates endorphins and helps people feel better, it helps them pull them out of depression and helps them feel a general sense of well-being overall. Sunlight helps with this too. So again, we're talking about how many people in this country, just in the US alone, are taking antidepressants. There's tens of millions doing that, right? How many of them are taking sleep aids? Okay, how many people are affected by sleep disorder? How many people are vitamin D deficient? And how many people are depressed and sad and not happy about their life, and how many people are overstressed, right? And here we have one therapeutic that's 100% free. So no complaining about cost tonight. Nobody can say your advice is too expensive. This is 100% free. All you have to do is go outside and bask in the glory of what is sunlight, right? So all these effects. Now, we're not even to this last one, this next one, which is immune regulation. We know that sunshine exposure helps our immune system do its job properly. So many of you dealing with autoimmune disease, again, the therapeutic benefit of sunshine, I cannot overemphasize this enough. This is why sunshine is considered to be one of the 7 non-negotiable behaviors when it comes to good health, meaning you can't avoid the sun and expect to be healthy. If you do, you're going to be disappointed if you avoid the sun. So let's talk about some of the things that benefits of sunshine. Again, protection against heart disease, diabetes. So that, if we look at all-cause mortality in the U.S., according to the experts, heart disease is number 1, cancer is number 2, and technically autoimmune disease should really be number 1, but they divide autoimmune disease up into 100 smaller diseases, and so it doesn't get the credit that it deserves. Heart disease, they clump them all together. Cancers, they clump them all together. Right? Actually, number 3 is not on this list, but it's medicine. So using prescription drugs is one of the top causes of death in the U.S. About 250,000 people every year die from the appropriate use of medicine. And then you have diabetes. Diabetes is a major cause of quality of life loss, huge expenditure, and huge death rates. Blindness, diabetes because it causes heart disease, right? And then, of course, autoimmune disease, which is vastly linked to sunshine. We know that because of vitamin D's role in the immune system. Vitamin D plays a regulatory role with how your immune system perceives the environment. Vitamin D deficiency can increase the risk for the development of autoimmune disease, including gluten reactivity and celiac disease. So again, all these are benefits of sunshine. The freest medicine on the planet. All it requires is that you go outside. Put your phone down, turn the TV off, and just go outside. So let's talk about some of the excuses of why people don't go outside. And one of them is this right here, medications that cause sensitivity to sunshine. So a lot of people, if we think about this, a lot of people take antibiotics. Sometimes it's for an infection. Other times most of the time really, it's for what I would call a perceived infection. Not really even an infection, but a perceived infection, meaning the doctor thinks you have an infection but didn't actually run any tests. It says here, just take the antibiotic in case, right? And so this can cause sensitivity to sunshine. Antifungals, or we could say antifungal medications for a fungal infection, or we could also say perceived fungal infection, because again, if the doctor doesn't run testing to understand whether you have fungal or bacterial infection, then again, it may be the wrong drug selection. Antihistamines. Well, this is ironic because allergy season is one of the biggest reasons people take antihistamines. And so during allergy season, people stay inside, but they're also taking antihistamines as an attempt to minimize or reduce their symptoms to allergy, not even understanding that if you got sunshine, remember what we said a minute ago, one of the jobs of the sun is immune regulation. And so when you have good immune regulation, you don't have the severity of reaction to outdoor environmental allergens. Now, I'm not saying that all allergies go away if a person gets sunshine. What I am saying, though, is many people who change their diet, eat well, get adequate sleep, rest, sunshine, clean air, clean water, don't struggle with seasonal allergies the way they would if they didn't do those things. And I see this all the time. People come to me all the time in my practice, and they're on drugs like Claritin and the leukotriene antagonists, the antihistamines, and they're on them year-round. Their doctors have actually prescribed these drugs to them year-round, even though it's supposed to be seasonal allergies, but they're on these drugs all the time. We change their diet, we change their lifestyle, and lo and behold, guess what? Their seasonal allergy problem goes away. So antihistamines, if you're on them all the time and you're not thinking about, potentially what else you might be doing, like getting some sunshine, you're missing a big part of the solution. Diuretics, these are medicines that are commonly used to treat blood pressure, high blood pressure, but also sometimes diuretics are used to treat swelling, water retention. See this a lot in ladies who have swollen ankles. The doctor will just give them a diuretic. And again, these medicines can cause sensitivity to sunshine. Statins, these are cholesterol-lowering drugs, right? So again, what happens when you lower your cholesterol? Cholesterol is what you need to make vitamin D and your other hormones, right? Your estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. So this class of medications also causes sun sensitivity. Non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, these are oftentimes prescribed for pain. And so they can also cause, so this would be ibuprofen, this would be drugs like naproxen. Again, non-steroidals, pain are what they're used for, but sun avoidance is what they can create. And then ladies, oral contraceptives, a big one. Raise your hand if you were young and doctor or mom or dad or you yourself just started to take oral contraceptives. How many of you, and I see this a lot mostly in ladies, how many of you have done these medicines and find yourself needing to wear sunglasses when you go outside? Raise your hand. Type in sunglasses if this is you, if this is what you find yourself. If this is you, you need to reevaluate what you're taking and what you're potentially doing to reduce your body's ability to even tolerate the sun. Because you should be able to go outside without sunglasses. As a matter of fact, wearing sunglasses prevents some of that really wonderful light from penetrating into your eye to allow you to properly produce melatonin and serotonin and cortisol and endorphins. So you really want to, evaluate this, right? So if you're on any of these medications, I would say, don't ask your doctor if these medicines are right for you. Ask your doctor why you really have a problem and how you can get off these medications. And if your doctor's not willing to have that conversation, it's probably time to hire and find a new doctor, because none of those medicines are a necessity for human health. They're all designed to mask your symptoms so that you can continue to go on about your life without addressing the real origin or root of why you're actually feeling bad. Let's talk about vitamin D and a little bit and gluten sensitivity. And I want to tie in gluten to this a little bit, because what we see now in the medical literature and in practice is that there's a correlation between vitamin D deficiency and gluten sensitivity. And it's a twofold correlation, so it's a revolving door. So what we see is that people with vitamin D deficiency have a greater risk of developing a reaction to gluten more aggressively, meaning lower vitamin D, greater response to gluten. Better, more stable vitamin D, more stable reaction as it relates to gluten exposure. But the other thing that we know is people with gluten sensitivity, more than half of them have vitamin D deficiencies. And the problem with that is there's a lot of overlap between gluten sensitivity symptoms and vitamin D symptoms. And so this is just a list of some of that overlap that we see. So number one is the obvious, what most people are aware of, which is bone loss. Subsequently, early bone loss and then osteoporosis. We know that people with vitamin D deficiency as well as gluten exposure have an increased risk for the developing of an infection or development of infection. We know they're at greater risk for calcium deficiency, which in turn leads to muscle cramps and muscle weakness. We know that elevated inflammation of the intestinal lining is prevalent in both situations. We know that elevated blood sugar is caused as a result of both vitamin D and gluten. We know joint pain can occur because of both. We know depression can occur because of both, and we know fatigue can occur because of both. So again, this is an overlap between gluten exposure symptoms and vitamin D deficiency symptoms that you want to be aware of. Now, beyond that, let's dive in a little bit more on, just for a minute, on vitamin D deficiency. Because I think if there's anything that could convince you to go outside and get some sunshine without sunscreen, it's this diagram. So if you look at the associated diseases on this side, so let's just look at the list of problems that we know vitamin D deficiency can cause and contribute to. We have neuropsychiatric disease, schizophrenia, major depressive disorder, and then neurodegenerative disease. Well, what's an example of a neurodegenerative disease? That would be something like multiple sclerosis, right? Where you are losing the myelin that coats your nerves, so that now you're losing your muscle strength, you're losing your sensory capacity, so you have proclivity toward abnormal neuropathy types of symptoms. And so neurodegenerative disease, very, very common with vitamin D deficiency, especially if it gets bad enough. We know that vitamin D deficiency can increase your risk of infections, especially, the infection that shall not be named, right? The one that everybody's mind for the last 2 years, the one that everybody has been talking about. And what's interesting is that, very early on, we were discussing this vitamin D deficiency as an all-cause risk for the development of severity of infection. And when we came out publicly and we were talking about this, if you guys remember, the media, right, the media liars came out and they posted this horrific article and bit on myself and some of my colleagues, and they claimed that we were recommending lethal doses of vitamin D. There's no such thing as a lethal dose of vitamin D. Nobody's ever died from vitamin D, but people have died from not taking vitamin D or not getting enough vitamin D, but nobody's ever died from it. And so again, risk of infection, including respiratory infections like COVID, but also tuberculosis and sepsis. Sepsis is when the infection gets into your bloodstream and can kill you. And this is why, we were saying early on, and even the research came out and backed this up, that 9 out of 10 deaths could be prevented with vitamin D. It's, again, free, sunshine, go outside. And so how many people, if we look at the advice that was given during these last 2 years, which is what? Put on a face mask to block your ability to make any vitamin D in the area that you're covering up. Number 2, it's stay indoors, don't even go outside, because somehow being outside is now dangerous and we can't go anywhere and be out in public. So the whole response, so anyway, we don't want to make this a show about that, but the whole response was just so ass backwards. And anyway, vitamin D, very, very effective at preventing infection. Vitamin D deficiency can also cause high blood pressure, which is one of the primary risk factors involved for the development of heart disease or a heart attack and strokes, which again are the number 1 and number 3 killers in the U.S. today. We know that vitamin D deficiency can contribute to type 2 diabetes, which is elevated blood sugar, right? It's that elevated blood sugar issue, which again complicates cardiovascular disease. We know that vitamin D deficiency can cause muscle pain and muscle weakness. When you don't have enough vitamin D, you can't get enough calcium into your muscles, so your muscles don't know how to properly contract and relax. They start to cramp. You get tightness in the muscles. That tightness can lead to joint compression and subsequently pain when you try to exercise. And so people really become exercise avoiders, right, because of the pain, because of the weakness. And then as time goes by, now they're not exercising, they're not getting sunshine, they're not getting their D, and then because of the pain, they quit exercising. And so now they have no chance, right? Because remember, exercise is one of those 7 non-negotiable fundamentals. Sunshine is one of those non-negotiable fundamentals. So they're missing 2 out of the 7 when that happens. Then we have this list of bone-deforming diseases, rickets, osteomalacia, which basically osteomalacia and rickets are the same. The difference between the two is rickets is generally the diagnosis given in children. Osteomalacia is generally the diagnosis given in adults. We see with rickets, we see bowing of the knees. So if you've ever seen anybody with knock knees, that's because when they were infants maturing and their skeletal frame was trying to mature, their bones were soft and weak and they started to bow out because they couldn't handle the gravitational force plus the person's weight. And so that's a common classic sign of rickets. And then osteoporosis, osteoarthritis, which is arthritis. Again, this is not muscle pain, but it's joint pain. And then we get skin diseases, and there are a number of skin diseases. In this case, epidermolytic ichthyosis and autosomal recessive congenital ichthyosis, both linked to vitamin D deficiency. But other skin diseases like psoriasis and eczema also have connections to vitamin D deficiency. And then we have allergic diseases, right? So asthma, wheezing disorders, urticaria, and atopic dermatitis. So this is, again, asthma is oftentimes misconstrued as as allergy. And that goes back to vitamin D and its ability to help the immune system regulate and appropriate how it should respond. And then we have autoimmune diseases like RA, rheumatoid arthritis, inflammatory bowel disease, type 1 diabetes, multiple sclerosis, psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis, and vitiligo, which is also a depigmentation skin disease. And then we get cancers, breast, colon, and prostate cancers. Now, the one argument that we hear with avoidance of sunshine is avoid the sunshine to prevent cancer. There are actually 19 types of terminal cancer that sunshine avoidance can cause, and there are no cancers that sunshine causes. Now, we could argue that sun burning could contribute to radiative damage in the skin that might lead to an increased risk of certain types of cancers when you're older, but sun burning is very different than regular sunlight exposure. And so that's what I want to emphasize. Now, if you're a ginger-skinned person, the rule of thumb is go outside every day to the toleration of the limits of your skin's capacity to absorb ultraviolet light without burning. So, if that's 5 minutes, get 5 minutes every day. Go out and get it. And understand, too, you don't have to get direct sunshine. You can be in the shade. You don't have to be, at noon, lying next to the pool half naked. You can be under a shade tree, you can be under an awning, and you can still reap huge benefits from your light, from that light exposure, from that UV light hitting your skin, hitting your eyes, and helping your body produce hormones and chemicals that are a necessity for good health. If you're darker skinned, African American, you've got to get more because the pigmentation in your skin is going to reduce your capacity to make vitamin D. And we see this a lot in research studies where the African American population has a greater proclivity toward vitamin D deficiency as a result of the pigment of the skin. So you've got to get even more. Now, I've had several African American patients have come to see me, and a lot of times it's just what I hear is I don't want to get too much sun because it makes me too dark. Well, I think as a society we have to kind of overcome the objections about how we look so much and think more about how much better we can feel and how much more we can have an impact on our health overall. So sunshine, very, very important. Now, some of you may be thinking, well, how much sunshine? Again, it's always based on the toleration of your skin, at least direct sun exposure over over your body without sunscreen. Now, if you're going to be on a boat or at the beach for hours and hours, you should cover up. You should get some sunshine, and then you should cover up. You should protect yourself. Now, preferably with a non-toxic sunscreen. Again, if you're going to be out in such a long time frame that there is that proclivity or that potential that you will burn. But you should be getting sunshine regularly. Now, if you get sunshine regularly, you will also enhance the pigment producing cells in your skin, and you'll give yourself added protection. Remember, your exposure to sun is built in with protection from sun burning if you get it consistently. Where people get into trouble is just like with exercise. If you haven't played football in 20 years and you go out on the weekend and you try to ham it up the way you did when you were in high school, you're going to get injured, right? We call that being a weekend warrior. Well, it's the same thing with sunshine. If you haven't had sunshine in 6 months, and then you go out and you try to get 8 hours of sunshine in one day, you're going to create a problem for yourself. So it's controlled, consistent exposure to allow your skin time to evolve and adapt to produce pigment to protect you from burning, but also to reap the benefit of the byproducts of chemicals that are produced as a result of consistent sunlight exposure. All right, so let's dive into your questions. And again, we're going to be taking those specific on sunshine. Okay. So do we take care of the blur? Some of you are asking about the blur. Hey, and if you can't see the image fully, I want to encourage you. We'll put the link up to these images that you can go over to Gluten Free Society and you can get access to these images and you can look at them a lot more closely without the blur if you had blur on your screen. I've heard that if you wear sunglasses, you will not get vitamin D, but I've also heard you absorb vitamin D through your skin. Either true or one or both. No, so sunglasses has nothing to do with vitamin D unless you're wearing like these massive sunglasses that cover most of your face. It's skin is what produces vitamin D, the cholesterol in your skin directly. Sunglasses, though, will prevent you from adequately producing melatonin and also serotonin. So it's think of the sunglasses as preventing melatonin and serotonin. Think of the skin and covering the skin as reducing your ability to produce vitamin D. Let's see, Amelie says, hi, Dr. Osborne. My friend has severe adult asthma, and the doctor advised the only way to prevent fibrosis of the lungs is daily steroid spray. Is there other help? Yeah, tons of it. Fibrosis is an autoimmune process, Amelie, so your friend needs to understand that there are four families or four primary triggers of an autoimmune process. One of them is the wrong food. So eating foods that your body's reactive to. Another family of triggers is chemical exposures. Oftentimes with fibrosis, one of the chemical triggers I see that's frequent is mycotoxin or mold exposure. Another family of those triggers happens to be the microbiome itself, so like microbial imbalance, and that can be measured. And then the last is nutritional deficits. Vitamin and mineral deficiencies can also be a major trigger. So if your friend hasn't had those things checked out, really I would encourage you to encourage her to work with a doctor who can measure those things consistently to help give her some guidance on the behavioral changes that she can modify and make. Is it true that it helps your eyesight if you go out and look at it in the morning before it comes up? You talking about looking at the sun? No, not to my knowledge. There's no truth in looking directly at the sun. I would say quite the opposite. Gluten and grain free for 3 weeks. Before this, why did my heart rate go up so high when I was out in the sun for more than 10 minutes? Because your body was probably a little bit overwhelmed. So this is a common thing that people think they're allergic to sunshine or that they can't tolerate the sunshine. So sunshine, it's one of those things that creates what's known as a hormetic effect or a hormetic impact. And that means that with the sun, right, because what is it? It's radiation. It's light waves that emit radiation that hit your body. And as your body is exposed to that radiation, if your body's not adept or capable of handling radiation, then you'll actually have a negative reaction to sun. And this is what we see, especially this is true when the diet is bad. When the diet causes stress and free radical formation, your ability to tolerate sun will be diminished. And that's because your body is trying to deal and cope with these stresses. And now you're adding an irradiative stress in, and so it can't handle it. It's already overwhelmed. So the issue here is, this is why it's so important to change the diet. There have actually been studies done in orbit of the Earth. So one of the studies, I was at a space conference one year, and the researchers were reporting on their work on mice. And so what they were doing is they took different groups of mice and exposed them to solar radiation without the Earth's atmosphere in place, right? And so what happened is they fed one group of mice basically a sugar water diet, and they fed another group of mice berries, a mixture of different berries, including blackberries and blueberries and raspberries. And what they found is that the group of mice that were given berries in their diet, the photopigments in the berries actually, they have digested, absorbed them, and they used them to protect themselves from radiation. So it was the actual food in the diet, it was the quality of the diet that provided plant nutrients that protected their skin, their bodies from the radiative damage. The mice that ate sugar water developed cancers. So in that regard, if you take that, and again, we can't always extrapolate animals to humans in terms of exact studies, but we do have studies that show that when humans eat junk food, they tend to be more affected in a negative way by the sun, where when they eat high quality foods with lots of photopigments from the healthy whole foods that they're eating. So you definitely want to keep that in mind. If you've experienced that going gluten-free, it's probably because you took away the stress and the inflammation of the gluten. Your body was more capable of getting sunshine. Okay. Yeah, I get it. So ridiculous how they have everybody convinced they're going to die from something. It makes me so angry. I can't agree more. I think if you look at all the advice, all the governmental advice over the last 100 years, right? Don't eat butter, real butter, eat fake butter called margarine. That's better for you, right? That was wrong. Don't eat sugar, not that sugar's good for you. Let's eat processed chemically chlorinated sugar, or let's eat an artificial amino acid that damages your nerves but tastes sweet, right? Those were wrong. Look at hydrogenated fat. Let's use hydrogenated fat, and let's add hydrogen to corn oil and soy oil. That's better for you than real healthy whole foods. Like all the health advice, look at the food guide pyramid. It had sugar on the food guide pyramid itself. Sugar was one of the groups. Grain was the base of the food guide pyramid. Like if you look at all the advice that we've been given from the government, it's usually wrong, right? I mean, governments, just because they're governments, don't make them right. And I think that's where a lot of people, they put a lot of faith and trust into an entity because there's a perceived benevolence to that entity. But in reality, that entity is run by a bunch of, well, I'm just going to say it like it is. If you look at the doctors and you look at the health experts that are in government, the reason they're in government is because they couldn't make it in private practice. They couldn't succeed in the real world helping anybody be successful in their health, so they had to go work for the government. So who we're employing with our tax dollars are a bunch of mediocre morons, again, my opinion, who don't know anything about health. And so most of the advice that they're giving is wrong, right? And nobody gets to hold them accountable because who's going to hold anyone accountable? Nobody's going to go to jail for saying avoid the sun because it causes skin cancer, because everybody's saying it in unison and all of them are wrong. And just because massive quantities of people are wrong doesn't make them right. And I think we learned that with these last 2 years of behaviors and actions, globally speaking. I'm curious if you know anything about geoengineering. They admit to well, let's not get into that. That's not, we don't know enough about geoengineering and weather manipulation and modification. We know it's being done, but how and to what extent that impacts people's health, in my opinion, it hasn't been thoroughly enough studied to make a bunch of claims. Are liver spots a cause of too much sun or too little sun? Liver spots are a cause of liver struggling, and your liver struggling. It's not that liver spots are caused by the sun, it's that they show up and they're more, they darken up when you do get sun exposure. But liver spots are just that. It's when your liver's struggling and your skin is having to do some of the work, and that'll show up as liver spots. What about melasma? Still avoid sunscreen? Is there anything else to do to prevent worsening of melasma? My experience with melasma is that a lot of times when people change their lifestyle and their diet, they don't have to so much worry about progressive or aggressive melasma in the skin. So again, I don't know where you're at with your diet and to what regard you've made any changes, but I would suggest you dial that in. Coconut oil for skin lotion and modest sun protection, SPF 2. You know, I'm not a big fan of any oil for sun protection. I think the best sun protection, if you go get sun, and if you need protection after, put some clothes and a hat on. I think those are better levels of protection than rubbing most of those oils. I mean, SPF 2 is not going to do much. My boss never sunbathed and died of melanoma of the heart. Well, let's see. Yeah, so there you go. My boss never sunbathed and died of melanoma of the heart. I try to get 20 minutes of sun at noon and never wear sunscreen. Is there a safe way for me to get a tan? I never wear sunscreen. I hate how it feels on my skin. Yeah, I think the safe way to get a tan is slow, steady wins the race, just like anything else with exercise or with with any aspect in life, is you do it consistently over time, but you don't do it in such an excess that it creates a problem, and you don't do it to such a small amount that it doesn't create a benefit. You've got to go kind of in the middle. And again, that is different for different people's skin types. Do I need to be in the sun or just outside? I dislike the sun very much. Well, for the vitamin D impact, it's good to be direct, have some direct sun, but you don't have to be in the direct noon sun. Again, you can still make vitamin D without having to be in the direct sun at the hottest time of the day. As far as the melatonin and the cortisol are concerned, you can just be outside. You don't have to be in the direct sun because the light's still going to get and reach your eyes. Should my husband avoid the sun on his face since he just had Mohs surgery to remove basal cell carcinoma on his cheek? Yeah, let him heal first. You don't want to go out there and hammer him with sunlight now. Let his skin heal up. If he's wearing, I wouldn't say he needs to wear sunscreen if he's just going outside for a short time. A hat's not a bad idea, but let that surgical incision heal. I take 3,000 milligrams of your liquid vitamin D. It has stopped my hair from falling out and seems to help with sleep and mood, but I'm wondering why it constipates me. I have a friend that has the same problem. You might be reactive to the actual oil, the emulsification barb, and the vitamin D itself. You might try, instead of using depending on which one, I have 3 different options for vitamin D, but you might try my Ultra D with K in powdered form if the oil version is constipating you. Let's see, I've been gluten and grain free. Oh, let's see, did I get that one already? Yeah, let's go down on the left. I wear sunscreen here in Florida. Is that bad? I think it depends on the context of when you're wearing and how long and whether or not you always wear sunscreen. Look, my advice on sunscreen is if you're going to be outside, be outside. Don't lather up with sunscreen, be outside. But if you're going to be outside for a prolonged period of time where you run the risk of getting a sunburn, that's when you could apply. Again, I prefer having you apply clothing as opposed to sunscreen. Put some clothing on that has protection from the UV light and maybe wear a hat as opposed to slathering, again, a bunch of toxic petro-based chemicals and other metals that have known potential for carcinogenic effects. I mean, a lot of the sunscreens today have known carcinogens in them. What kind of sense does that make to rub that all over your body? Your skin's an organ and it absorbs too. So what you put on it should be, you should discern with intelligence that the ingredients are not bad for you. And that again is where, look at that ingredient. The sun, you just say it like this, the suntan companies, the companies that create suntan lotion, or rather, let's just say sun protection lotion, are owned by pharmacy. I mean, do you trust that group of people with your best interests of your health? Where have they succeeded and not, where have they succeeded in the past, in your opinion and in your experience? And that's a question only you can ask yourself one way or the other, but I don't trust them. I'm not going to use it. So polymorphic light eruption, what's the cause? Is it vitamin B3 or vitamin D or other nutrient deficiency? In my experience, Mandy, it doesn't have to be those two. It can be multiple deficiencies. I see a lot of people that have that type of situation where again, it's not always cut and dry, 1 or 2 different deficiencies. Sometimes it's a unique pattern that we find in individuals. What I would encourage you to do is get tested. I wear eyeglasses that darken in the sun when I go for my 30-minute walk. Would sitting in the sun when I'm done help? If so, how long? Yeah, sitting in, again, there's not a time frame so much as it is If you're talking about getting the sun on your skin, the limitation of your skin is going to be the limiting factor. You don't want to be out there long enough to burn. If you're talking about your eyes, just take your glasses off. Like you mentioned, have a seat, take your glasses off, get 20 minutes or so of sun exposure in that way. Let's go down on the left and also on the right. So the comment was, I have light sensitivity with my fibro, so I need sunglasses. And I would challenge you that you own your fibro, but you shouldn't. Like, you should ask why I have fibro. You don't have light sensitivity because you have fibro. You have fibro, and that comes with light sensitivity. And maybe it's because some of the medicines you're taking to treat your fibro, or maybe it's because you haven't changed diet and adjusted your behavior well enough to overcome the fibro. Fibro, as a disease itself, is, in my experience, curable. You just have to figure out what the triggers are. And so, don't own it, Karen. I would just encourage you not to own the disease. When people say my disease, my fibro, my celiac, my rheumatoid arthritis, my diabetes, what you're really doing is you're taking ownership and you're moving into the house of that disease. It's a psychological thing that if you just change your perspective and say, not my fibro, but say the fibro that racks my body, and then ask the question, what do I need to do? What changes do I need to make so that that's not happening anymore? But don't move into the disease. I have vitiligo and have had lots of sun, so I don't scent to get too much sun because looks too spotty. Yeah, so you also have vitiligo, and so there's a vanity issue at stake. But vitiligo is also an autoimmune disease, much like fibro. And so if you understand what's triggering the vitiligo and you make behavioral changes to overcome it, then it won't be something that you so much are as concerned by. Why is it so common for rash as an autoimmune disease? It's very common for many reasons. One of the reasons is there's intestinal permeability. And so what happens in intestinal permeability or leaky gut is you get bacterial toxins that leak into the bloodstream, into the portal circulation, and they can damage the liver, causing non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So those toxins, again, as they bleach through, they damage the liver. When the liver's overstressed, when the liver's overworked, we'll see the rash come out in the skin, because the skin is actually the largest detoxification organ in the body. And so if the liver can't do its work, the skin will try to step in and help it out, and that can manifest as different types of skin inflammatory processes. If you're getting bumps on your arm from being in the sun a lot, it's most likely, Nicole, it's an antioxidant issue that you have. Vitamin C, omega-3 fatty acid deficiencies can create bumps on the arms in that way from sun exposure. So again, I would encourage you to have your vitamin and mineral deficiency status checked to see whether that's happening for you. Let's go down a little bit on the left and on the right. So, question about the best non-toxic sunscreen, the UPF clothing versus lotions with chemicals. I'd go with clothing every time. But you don't necessarily have to get clothing with chemicals. You can get regular clothing. It still will protect you from sun. You don't have to have special SPF clothing. That's become more of a marketing gimmick in recent years. But clothing itself is going to provide protection from the sun. Dermatologist said I have photosensitivity. What does that mean, Grace? That's the question you should ask your dermatologist. What does that mean, photosensitivity? Why? Again, why do I have photosensitivity? Don't just accept, hey, you have X disease. Why? You didn't have it your whole life. It hasn't been there. It hasn't been with you since you came out of the womb. So what is it that's happening in your life, in your behavior, in your diet? It's contributing to your body's inability to respond appropriately to the environment and still protect you, right? Especially to something so inherently beneficial as sunlight. I read that sunglasses protect your eyes from certain conditions later in life. I think most of that is kind of not true, depending on the level of exposure and the length of exposure that you get. There's certainly, again, with sunshine, let's be clear, let's use common sense. I want to encourage any of you, you can't overdo it. So the key is like in many things in life is moderation. You don't go out and bake your eyes in the sun all day, and that, but in that regard, you want to look at it in moderation. Again, your skin toleration is probably a pretty safe bet, as to what your sun tolerance level is. Why am I allergic to the sun? I rush out. I do not use lotions or SPF. I have to slowly reintroduce my skin to the sun every spring. I think you probably have other issues that you're struggling with. If you're again, just like I said earlier, if you're reacting to the sun, you probably got some dietary issues that need to be addressed, because your body is perceiving that sunlight as a hormetic, a stress effect, and that radiation is too much for you to handle. What amount of vitamin D should I take daily? It's different for different people. I would say get your vitamin D levels checked. If they're below 30, then you should probably look at, depending on what your medication history is, you'd be plenty safe between 6,000 and 10,000 units a day. But work with your doctor to keep your levels measured. To get your levels up, if you're under 30, anything less really than 6,000 is not going to do very much. It's like spitting on a forest fire. Is it true redheads can make their own vitamin D? Well, remember, we all make our own vitamin D. So yeah, it's true that redheads make vitamin D. We all do. Yeah, you can also eat vitamin D. It's just most people don't like the foods that contain it. I mean, the primary vitamin D containing food is liver. Raise your hand today if you've had a healthy serving of liver. Probably no one's hand in the room goes up, maybe a few. But liver, and mushrooms can be a source of vitamin D, but you gotta eat an awful lot of that for you to get enough to match the levels, especially if you're trying to dig your way out of an autoimmune hole. How do you maintain a healthy vitamin D level when October to March is cold in Canada? Well, that's a great question, Angela. One of the things that you do is you supplement, and that can be done. In the winter months, I've seen clients be successful supplementing anywhere from 6,000 to 10,000 units a day in winter months, getting it checked every 3 or 4 months or so to make sure you're not doing too much. So that's one way to keep your vitamin D levels up. But the other thing that you might consider, look, if you live north of 27 degrees latitude, which Canada certainly qualifies as that, you have to understand that your exposure to sunlight is already going to be diminished. Now, if we look historically at what people did in the winter months, especially before Europeans colonized the United States, is that tribes were migrant. They would go north and south for winter and summer, and so they would move. With the weather, so that there were lots of reasons. They were following the food, but in essence, too, by default, they were staying with the sun and the exposure. And so in the winter months, when I've lived, and I used to live a lot further north, I would actually do a tanning bed, but I wouldn't go to a tanning bed to tan. I know a lot of you are thinking, tanning bed, that's crazy. No, tanning beds are UV light exposure that helps your skin produce vitamin D. And if you live 27 degrees north latitude and you get a 6-month long period of winter that's just harsh, 2 to 3 minutes, in a tanning bed a couple of times a week could be the thing that keeps you healthier. So don't look at that as necessarily bad. But I'm not talking about the 30-minute sessions to get bronzed up, right? That's not what I mean. I'm talking about small levels of exposure periodically through the winter to help emulate that sunshine, because you're not going to migrate to the south. Now, some of you snowbird, right? A lot of folks in New York snowbird down to Florida in winter months, or snowbird down to Arizona or New Mexico in the winter months for that very reason. That's a big question, Brenda says. If not already, please address why some people get skin cancer and others don't. What is deficient in their nutrition? Could liver not working optimally promote, exacerbate skin cancer? There's a lot of factors in skin cancer, and I would say probably the biggest factor in cancer, whether it's skin cancer or any form of cancer, is diet choice. And so diet is, we try to find what is the uniform diet for everybody to follow to not get cancer. There isn't one. There's no such thing. And anybody who's trying to sell you a uniform diet to heal all cancer is wrong, because there are some people that eat a certain way and it's beneficial, but another person may eat that same way and it's detrimental. And so this comes back to how do you prevent without knowing? Well, one of the ways that I would encourage you, if you're trying to prevent something like cancer, or if you've had cancer and you're trying to prevent a recurrence of cancer, is to test your food, test your nutrition, your vitamin and mineral status, so that you can make adjustments, so that you can reduce or minimize your risk, through proper nutrition of all disease, not just cancer, but of all disease. Should I stay outside when there's chemtrails in the sky? Good question. I mean, the reality is you got to go outside. We have chemtrails up there. Is it a greater risk to be outside when there's a chemtrail, or is there a greater risk to not go outside at all? I think you got to get sunshine. I think you've got to control what you can, and sunlight exposure is definitely one of those things. My test revealed very high levels of vitamin K in my system. What could cause this? Supplementation. Depends on what you eat, and it depends on what kind of vitamin K was tested and how it was tested. I mean, if you were serum tested, I wouldn't hold too much weight in that test. Serum testing, you could have higher levels because of something that you ate before you got your blood work done, because serum is not an accurate representation of long-term status of nutrients. So let's see, let's go down on both sides. Let's go down on the right. Can a 7-month-old baby be low in vitamin D? Oh, where'd that go? There we go. Barb's asking, can a 7-month-old baby be low in vitamin D? This baby starts to cry, goes ballistic, stops breathing, and then passes out. It scares the you-know-what out of all of us. I bet it does. Prayers with you, Barb. Yes, a 7-month-old can definitely be low in vitamin D, especially so many parents, minimize any kind of exposure that an infant baby gets out of fear for the potential problem. But yeah, absolutely a 7-month-old, especially if mom going through pregnancy wasn't checking or monitoring or making sure her vitamin D levels were up, and especially if mom's levels are down and she's breastfeeding, because vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin. It will go through breast milk. Breast milk can be a rich source of vitamin D for the infant baby breastfeeding. I like that. So Rose shares her story. When I took those kinds of drugs, I did have to wear sunglasses. Now I hardly take any drugs, and eye sensitivity is gone. Love to hear that. Not sure I understand your question, Cindy. What about rosacea? What about rosacea? Clarify for me. Okay, so rosacea in the sun. So you go outside and your rosacea gets worse. You've got something triggering that. There's probably, again, a big food issue. If you're going out in the sun and your rosacea gets worse, there's going to be an underlying issue. I've seen that happen hundreds and hundreds of times, and women in particular. Rosacea is exacerbated by heat and hot beverages, but usually it's exacerbated but not caused by. And so it sounds to me like it's just an exacerbation, but not an actual cause. Is it imperative to keep the stress levels down? Prayer truly helps. Yeah, okay, so that wasn't a question. Do tanning beds provide any benefits? I think I answered that. They do, but it's how you use them. Don't use them to tan. Use them to get that small dose exposure periodically through winter months, especially if you live up north. I get burned on certain days no matter how long I expose my skin. No corresponding correlation to the cloud cover, atmospheric conditions, other days. Where do you live? Because there's some place in New Zealand and Australia where exposure can be more powerful, and so less time, and that's true of people that live in the mountains as well. I turned on my other laptop and the PowerPoint slide is much clearer. Go figure. Yeah, so, okay, good. So that was your computer, not ours. Not good. I'm glad you got it figured out. Do clear safety glasses block your ability to make melatonin from the sun? Generally not, unless they have like a coating on them. Some of them still, even though they're clear, have a coating. Like a lot of your windows will have a coating, even though it's clear, that does reflect the sun. So I would look at calling the people that made the glasses to ensure one way or the other. Is it true that you don't get the benefits of vitamin D if you shower? No, not true. I actually asked Michael Hollick that question. Michael Hollick is arguably the world's leading expert on vitamin D. And I asked him that question a few years ago when I put on the Autoimmune Revolution, the Autoimmune Revolution Summit. And his answer directly to me was no, that showering after sunshine has zero effect on your vitamin D, and I believe it. And if you think about it, that the dihydrocholesterol and the vitamin D production happens in a deep layer of the skin. It doesn't happen right on the surface. And skin does not need 3 days without water to make vitamin D. Remember, your body's 70% water. So I don't know where you read that, but probably not a good source. I like this comment. Just a comment on grain-free. I've gone grain-free and no more inflammation. My dog had swelling and inflammation around her spine. I fed her grain-free food treats and no more issues. Thank you, Aaron, for sharing. That's fantastic to hear. New parents are doing vitamin D drops for newborns. Seems like a big push. What's your take on it? How do babies get D3 before drops? Healthy parents. Healthy mothers really provided good level of vitamin D in the breast milk for babies. Moms today aren't healthy. I mean, and I'm generalizing. Don't come at me and attack me and say, you said all moms aren't healthy. No, the vast majority of Americans aren't healthy. They're over 50% are overweight. They're malnourished. They eat like garbage. They don't exercise. They're on computer devices all day long. They don't get sunshine. They don't sleep well. They have chronic pain issues. I mean, America spent $4.2 trillion last year for drugs and healthcare. $4.2 trillion. That's 20% of the entire budget for the entire country. So 20% went to medicines and medical care. And probably 90% of that money didn't have to be spent if people would just wake up to the fact that they need to change their diet and change their lifestyle and their way that they're living and quit following the advice of the people that landed us in this situation in the first place, which is public health policy. Public health policy is wrong. It always is wrong. It's because it's bought and sold for by media and by companies that want to sell you stuff. They want to scare you into doing things that actually are helpful and then sell you stuff as a solution. And so they spend trillions of dollars lobbying politicians to create policy that makes no sense, right? And then gullible people everywhere believe it because they can't fathom that the government would somehow not have their best interests in mind. Look, realize that nobody has your best interests in mind. And I'm not picking on the government, but ultimately nobody has your best interests in mind except you. And so you have to stand up and take personal responsibility, and you have to make good decisions, and you have to think about the decisions that you're making, how they're impacting your health and your life. And if you're not willing to do that, and you're just trusting somebody else to do it for you, I can promise you you're going to be diseased and disappointed. Very few guarantees in life, but that's one of them. The government's been wrong on virtually almost everything they've done. Where did I go off tangent there? What was the question? So how did babies get vitamin D before? So I think babies had healthier parents and more robust parents, and parents that they got sunshine and actually ate real food. And today we just see less and less and less of that. And so we're seeing a whole new generation of illness in children as a result of those behavioral changes. I got halo moles from sun damage. Doctor said my skin is smart because it ate the damaged mole. Is this true? I'm covered in moles. It's hard for me to make that determination. I mean, I'd probably need to look at pictures and have a deeper history there. But that sounds like a doctor just making something up. Again, maybe not, but it's what it sounds like to me. if I'm gluten-free and eating healthy, will I still get sunspots? There's a lot of reasons people can get sunspots that have nothing to do with gluten. So it's possible, but it's also possible that you won't. It's hard to know. I mean, Cindy, without having more history about your nutrition and your other food, it's hard to answer that question. Why do people say that the sun exposure causes signs of skin aging and wrinkles? Because they're trying to sell you wrinkle-free cream, and they're trying to sell you lotions and potions that are youth-defying serums and masks and all other kind of nonsense. You need sunlight. And again, if you overexpose your skin to sun, overexpose, and that's a big fine line difference, then yeah, you can damage the skin and damage the collagen that prevents the skin from being elastic. But again, that's generally caused by poor diet and abuse of sunshine. And so again, exposure to the sun is not the same thing as abuse. Let's see. Do you know that UVC is now being detected at ground level? Not sure I see the whole question there. Yeah, so somebody asked about blueberries. How many blueberries for sun protection? I don't think anybody's really studied that in humans directly, Cindy, but I can just tell you what I do personally. I eat about 4 ounces of blueberries anytime I know I'm going to be out in the sun for any length of time. So like this weekend, I was mowing my yard, and I ate 4 ounces of blueberries. Actually, I went out to my blueberry bush and picked 4 ounces of blueberries and ate them before I started mowing. But blueberries are a great food if you're not allergic to them, and definitely can pass on some of their photopigments to help protect your skin from the radiation. Is there a natural product which I can use to tighten the skin of my neck since I'm losing weight from not eating gluten? Yeah, the best natural product in the world that costs you $0 is exercise, Sandy. And I don't say that jokingly. Like, if the skin in your neck is looser, then you need to work the muscles in your neck. And there's several exercises that you can do. One of the best neck exercises that will work the muscles in the front, the platysma muscles and the sternocleidomastoid muscles, is sit-ups. It's just going down and doing sit-ups, because when you go back, you're putting that gravitational force on the head. You have to hold your head erect as you go back in the sit-up, and so it really helps to strengthen those muscles. Remember, if you can make those muscles a little bit larger and a little bit firmer, it's going to take away some of the skin sag that you experience with the weight loss. You might also try collagen. We have something called ultra collagen that might be effective for you in that regard as well. I like that. So Mark says, my mother was very fair and never sunbathed, but her vitamin D level was over 100 and she lived to 98. Yeah, you don't have to sunbathe. Again, that's not what tonight's show is about, but good point. I mean, she had regular exposure, I would imagine, just didn't sunbathe. And she might have eaten more organ meat. Again, organ meat is a very big missing element to most people's diets today. Is it okay to expose testicles to sunlight every day? I do it for testosterone increase. Yeah, interestingly, there have been some pretty good studies on testosterone improvement with sunlight exposure to the testes directly. Yeah, again, don't burn them. Sensitive area to burn. What's the best vitamin for fighting fatigue? The one you're deficient in, Debbie. The one you're deficient in, so test it. Can rosacea be from gluten in makeup? Yes. I've seen that be the case. Is it beneficial to expose, where'd it go? There it is. To expose yourself even when it's cloudy. I don't feel the benefits of sunlight when it's hidden by clouds. Yeah, there's still some benefit, even on a cloudy day. Baby sitting in the grass while mama hung clothes on the line. Yes. That's kind of what we should probably look at going back toward a little bit. I think in society today, we've really traded our common sense for convenience, and we've allowed people to make decisions about our autonomous selves because we've given our trust to the wrong people. And I think part of that, I'll go on a little rant here, part of that occurred, when antibiotics came on the scene, in the earlier 1900s. Antibiotics created, in my opinion, the miraculous life-saving ability of antibiotics to work, right? So you could take somebody who's going to lose a leg or lose a limb or even potentially die, and you could save their life with an antibiotic. That, in my opinion, projected doctors onto a pedestal of godlike proportions, right? And we should have no false idols. And so I think what happened is a generation of people through antibiotics, they gave the doctors too much credit. The doctors had this wonderful tool, and I'm not saying that we should, poo-poo antibiotics in that discovery, but what I am saying is that that's what created a lot of trust in a medical system. But if you look at the success of that same medical system today, let's just track it through from then to today, really, there's one drug class that actually treats disease and can be effective. And that drug class are the antimicrobials. So like there are certain antivirals, like ivermectin, antimalarials, again, ivermectin, and antibiotics, penicillin, and antifungals that actually do what they say they're supposed to do, which is treat the infection itself. And there's a benefit to that. There's an effect that is helpful. But look at every other class of medicine. And I challenge any of you to name a class of medicine that actually treats the cause of a person's illness. Because none of the other classes do. They treat the symptoms of the illness. Now, they don't even treat the symptoms. And we can say treat all day long, but what does it mean to treat? Let's call it what it is. They cover your body's alarm system. They stop your body from warning you to make a change. That's pseudo treatment. It's false treatment because it's not really helping you. It has the guise of compassion because, if it's a pain medicine, we're getting you out of pain. But the reality is we're allowing you to continue to make the same mistakes you've been making, but hiding those mistakes from you by sweeping it under the rug with medicines that suppress your body's ability to feel the world around you and to interact with the world around you. And that's not a great trade. But again, I think the discovery of antibiotics, it put doctors on a pedestal, it put medicine on this pedestal that people, more than anything, they dogmatically worshipped at the altar of medicine and the miracle of antibiotics and stopped thinking and taking responsibility for what they should do. And they gave all the credit and all that responsibility over to the doctor. And to the doctor's defense, that's not fair. Like when people come see me, I don't want the responsibility of their health. It's the last thing in the world I want. That's a huge and tremendous responsibility. I want to play a role in guiding them into how they can achieve it, but I certainly don't want to have that responsibility thrust upon my shoulders to solve it with a passive drug treatment that really isn't going to solve anybody's problem. And so here we are today, right? Here we are today with this naive trust in a system that literally spent $4.2 trillion last year and ranks number 11th of 11 industrialized countries, the top 11 industrialized countries in the world. We rank 11th, but spend more than anyone else. And if that doesn't tell you that empirically we have a failed system, I don't know what to say to convince you otherwise. Let's see here. If you can't control diabetes with your diet is wrong, Nancy. So get with somebody who can help you with that. Terry says, I've had squamous cell twice, once on the shoulder, once on the head. I baked in the sun as a teen in the 70s. What can I do to repair my body? Follow the 7 fundamentals, Terry. And if you don't have a copy of No Grain, No Pain, they're in there, but I would encourage you to check it out. It's pretty simple. Eat well, eat right for yourself. Sleep well, exercise well, get regular, moderate sunshine. Drink clean water, breathe clean air, and manage and mitigate your stress. Those 7 are non-negotiable, and do those things well, and that gives your body the best opportunity at protecting you from future events. I get sun, eat meats, fats, butter, mostly green vegetables, but I get headache that starts in the back of the head, neck, and traps after I eat. What is that? You're probably allergic to something you're eating. It's very common to have something called viscerosomatic pain referral. That is, when you eat something that irritates your intestines, especially if you're talking about back here, if you irritate the stomach or irritate the esophagus, you can get referred pain patterns to the shoulders, to the neck, to the musculoskeletal tissues that share that same nerve distribution. So I'd encourage you to investigate that as a potential possibility. So processed yogurts and processed breakfast cereals have the quantity of vitamin D that's the equivalent of trying to spit out a forest fire. There's nothing much in there that's going to be super effective. Metformin is a great drug, but don't get me wrong, everyone needs to keep their blood sugar down. Metformin, I would argue that, Greg. I would say metformin's not a great drug. I would say metformin offers a false sense of security to the millions of diabetics who haven't been taught to change their diet or their lifestyle. There are some doctors that recommend metformin for longevity, but metformin is also genotoxic, so it's toxic to the genome of humans, and that's not something that you want to trade off. If you want the same kind of effect of metformin without the genotoxicity, I would encourage berberine, which is a natural plant-based compound. Is diabetes reversible? Type 2 diabetes is definitely reversible, Isabella. The inflammation caused by the cereals will slow down absorption. Okay, I think I got them all. We're like 18 minutes over. If I didn't get to your question, come back next week, and hopefully we'll get it next week. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your week. And if you want more from Dr. Osborne, I want you to encourage you to come visit me at glutenfreesociety.org. Make sure you sign up for our newsletter. Again, it's the one way we can communicate where we're certain we won't be censored. So sign up there if you want to get more. And if you want to get the show notes from our Monday night shows, that's where you can get those notes as well. Again, have a fantastic week, and we'll see you next Monday night for another episode of Pick Dr. Osborne's Brain. Take care. Hey, don't forget to tune in next week, same time, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, for another Pick Dr. Osborne's Brain show. Bring all your toughest health questions to me. I look forward to answering them. And before you leave today, make sure you hit subscribe. And once you do, click that bell. That bell is going to allow us to remind you right before we go live, but it's also going to allow us to remind you when we come out with other video content all week long. We've got lots of episodes coming your way all week long, and I don't want you to miss anything. So again, subscribe, hit that bell so that you can get notified when we have that new information put up for you. Thanks so much, and I'm wishing you excellent health. Have a great week. We'll see you next Monday night.